Welcome back, everyone. This is By the Guide. We're on the final portion of the Zerg campaign now. I want to let everyone know to be aware that this will look slightly different as the website I normally use for my PDFs is currently down, so I took actual physical pictures in a lot of cases to showcase the strategy guide in this episode. There it is. You'll see it looks slightly different, but still great nonetheless. The title of Mission 7 is The Culling. It's still on Char, only 1 hour later. Dagoth interrupts Kerrigan's anger to say that Zaz is apparently dead. Kerrigan just believes that he'll be reincarnated, as we have been led to believe by the Overmind. However, it looks as though the Protoss have some kind of new attack that can stop that reincarnation from happening, and even the Overmind is now concerned. Kerrigan definitely realizes that Tassidar's plan was only a diversion and that she underestimated him. But without its master, Zaz's brood is now running amok, as Dagoth says. That's a great word, running amok, which means they're out of control. And we have to now eliminate that brood in order to make sure it doesn't cause further damage. The objectives on the bottom left state to eradicate every last remnant of the Garm brood. I don't know where the Garm brood came from. I guess that's the name for this now feral brood. Well, with that, we can go into the mission. As soon as I pull up the mission map, we see our start location is at the bottom middle. To the right, I want to draw your attention to how it says build hatchery here, which is strange because it appears there are 0 minerals or gas around that area. So, okay. We also can tell we are surrounded by multiple enemy bases, 2 to our left and 1 to the north. And then even further north at the very top of the map is an enormous enemy base. So, okay, there's also multiple routes that we need to take. This is turning out to be quite a bit different than we've experienced so far. It continues to be different when we pull up the battle strategy, which I want the mission map up at the same time because it's great for reference in this case. The author says we should not move out until we establish that hatchery and a sunken colony for defense. We need to establish the hatchery at the right, at the mouth of the pathway, and then build a sunken colony. Now, a sunken colony is our main defensive structure and it needs a Zerg spawning pool. So we need all 3 of those buildings before we do anything. This is completely different than I have ever approached this mission. I've only ever attacked the enemy base that was nearest to us, which is the one that is basically directly above us, and then I take it over. So why don't we observe how the author's strategy unfolds? I begin by moving the units over to the right to what the author called the mouth of the pathway. I start building the hatchery, and I can see, I suppose, why over here, because it's somewhat secluded. You can really only be attacked by 2 small angles. Still seems kind of strange, though, to not just go straight for the base and take it out. So I go through building out those structures, and have you ever had something happen where you think, this is a sign, I believe, of what might be in store and ahead for me? Well, to the left, I noticed a lone Zergling running in and running right back out, no more than maybe 2 seconds. But I saw that, and it came to me that, I don't know if this is going to go as I think that it might. So after I get those structures completed, it's probably best to pull up what the next part of the strategy is. It informs us that after everything is completed and constructed, to move our attack force to the enemy hatchery to the north of our starting position. As we clear away the enemy base, we should move our drones up to build a second hatchery closer to the Vespene and mineral resources. The author makes a point that the enemy creep is lightly defended and we shouldn't have much trouble. So, okay, well, why don't we just begin the attack then? As soon as I move my units to the north, I come across an Ultralisk. Now that is probably the most powerful Zerg unit that is in the entire game, and it's under the control of the enemy, and I take it out relatively easily by doing a little bit of back and forth micro. However, again, I was thinking, this is strange. How did the author not mention that there's this Ultralisk in our way? I continue going north and come across even more defense. Not just Hydralisks and even the occasional Mutalisk, but there seems to be sunken colonies and spore colonies, and there is an incredible number of defense. What is going on here? This is not light. So as I'm going through this, I continue to lose some units here and there, getting whittled down, picked off one by one, and as I'm continuing this, it was really coming to me, is the author just some kind of RTS pro? What is happening right now? How did they micro their units so well and so fantastically that they were able to do this and it came off as easy and light to them? After I basically lost everything, I sat at the restart screen before officially restarting the mission in order to contemplate what just happened. I went back to the guide and I realized I'm not attacking in the correct location. The author said to attack north of our starting position, where I attacked north of the location that we built the hatchery. That was the confusion that I had, and now it makes sense why this was so unbelievably difficult. So, okay, this is making more sense now. I start over, get to the exact same spot that I was at previously. I even built up a couple of extra drones because I had the extra 200 minerals. That's not enough to build a hatchery. 300 is required, so I thought I would build some extra in order to gather resources quicker. I send over my units to start attacking the base, which is now to my left. Absolutely different. We can see how much different it is in terms of the attackers. Yes, there are some still, as it is to be expected. However, completely different than having all of this static defense like the sunken colonies. Did not come across any Ultralisk this time. Much smoother overall. It's at that point that I look at my minerals and I am pretty far away from being able to build a hatchery. I only have a small number, 4 I believe, of the drones to collect minerals, so it is going pretty slowly. And it was at this point that I thought, again, this is an interesting strategy, so I need to basically sit here in order to get the resources available to build a hatchery closer, as the author mentioned. I'm not really sure the point of that and when it could have been built closer. Maybe the author just wanted to help give us some nice space and we could sit here quietly and try to clear our mind in order to really enjoy fully the next part of this mission. Enjoy it I do, because it is something that I think StarCraft does really well, which is now it is a slow, methodical buildup of the base. That is a great feature of StarCraft, that the base building is always so enjoyable to me. And every mission, for the most part, almost every mission, focuses on the base building aspect. It really makes it nice to go through that again and again to continually become familiar with each race. And it's just something that's nice to do as you figure out the best layout to do, because everything is really up to you when it comes to creating the base. So I definitely have a great time with that part. Now that we have some space in our mind, why don't we look at the next part of the battle strategy with extreme clarity? We should be building 2 groups of 12 Zerglings each and take those Zerglings to the path that's on the map, which is just to the left and the right of our current base, to the enemy installations, and to not let anything panic us. Well, don't worry, Bart, the author, I really appreciate you saying that, but because you allowed us so much space, we will not allow emotion to take us over, so really appreciate that. We will overwhelm the enemy, he says, so why don't we just start doing that, see how that unfolds as well. Everything else has gone so smoothly, I have no doubt that this will too. I get my Zerglings ready to run up the ramp, and as soon as I get up there, I essentially just win the mission at this point. If this were a different universe, that is, then I probably did win the mission. However, in this one, my Zerglings really get kind of slaughtered. There's all this static defense of those sunken colonies, there's Hydralisks, so I figure I need to take a different approach when going throughout the rest of this mission. From now on, I am taking just groups of Hydralisks with me wherever I go. Zerglings, Hydralisks. I end up being able to take out the base to the left. I establish my own base there so I can get some additional resources. I swing that army not too long afterwards over to the right in order to do the same thing. More Zerglings, more Hydralisks, in order to take that base out as well and establish a presence there to get even additional resources for the final big push. This mission got me pretty good. I was legitimately feeling ready to complete the mission, to win it, in order to go to the next one and see what was in store next. I get that army built up. The author mentions only to do Guardians and also Hydralisks, so that's exactly what I build up. I attack up the right-hand side of the map and I push over towards the left. I also have another small army of Guardians from the left-hand side that's pushing up and over to the right in order to do a kind of pincer attack in order to sweep every single building off of the map. As per usual, we have to make sure to destroy every last building in order to complete the mission. We destroy the last building on the map, which concludes Mission 7. 100% a unique way of going about this. I, again, never thought of going through the mission in this way. And I'm sure the author and the team that worked on this, they probably also were with the developers trying to figure out ways to change up even the build orders or the build styles, how you build up throughout the mission on top of the missions themselves even changing. So overall, very interesting, and I'm ready to go to Mission 8. The title card shows we are still on the planet Char, and it is called Eye for an Eye. The Overmind shows us that the Protoss that murdered the Cerebrate Zaz are unlike anything the Zerg have faced before. They are Dark Templar that radiate the energies similar to the Overmind, and that is how they were able to kill a Cerebrate. But the primary Protoss called Zeratul, that many will recognize that name, that mind of the Zeratul character touched Zaz when they killed Zaz, and that allowed for the location of the home world of the Protoss called Ire to be discovered. The Overmind finishes with, "At long last, my children, our searching is done, and soon we shall assault Ire directly." I didn't realize that we were a child of the Overmind, so hopefully after we assault Ire directly, we are able to have recess. That would be very nice. It looks like Dagoth finishes also by stating that the Dark Templar can cause no more harm, so we need to make sure to stop them, and Kerrigan will help us with that as well. On the bottom left are those objectives to destroy the entire Protoss base, let no Dark Templar escape, and as always, Kerrigan must survive. Going into the mission and pulling up that map, it has quite a bit of information on it. We begin in the top right. It's the main base with a Nidus Canal 1. Also, there's Nidus Canal 2 right below that. I can tell you the Nidus Canals connect various bases that we have in the mission. It's an awesome building. I will show how that works very shortly because it's really distinct and another unique aspect to the Zerg race. It looks as though there are circles for beacons and squares for Protoss units. We will just keep that in mind as we go through this. Directly south or below us is a Protoss base. There are also some minerals, and in the far bottom right is another one of our bases with Nidus Canal number 2, so that connects to the main base of ours. Going to the left is another Protoss base. It's very large. Going north, a third Protoss base, and then another one of our own bases. Quite a bit going on. When we get to the resource management, it looks as though we only need 4 Hydralisks at each beacon to stop those Dark Templars from going through. And the battle strategy, it's also really short, where we just need to get those drones collecting resources. Nothing new there. build up those hydralisks the same as the resource management tab had mentioned, and then also that the enemy will constantly test the beacon sites, and if even one of those Dark Templars get through, we will lose the mission. Why don't we go into the gameplay and show how those Nidus canals function? All I do is grab a couple of hydralisks from the base, and I right-click them onto the Nidus canal, and they are immediately transported to another location on the map where the paired building to the primary Nidus canal is built. In this case, because the bases are so separated, it's an amazing idea to showcase this building in the way they designed this mission, so that way it's really built around the Nidus Canal. Either that, or perhaps they already had the idea of trying to stop Dark Templars from escaping, and they incorporated the design of the Nidus Canal into it afterwards. However they did it, really well done, and it's a great showcase of this new building that we have. No joke, less than 2 minutes of real time, I'm already attacked by a Dark Templar that wipes out my forces on the bottom right, and it eventually escapes, meaning that I lost the mission in like 2.5 minutes or something in real time. That legitimately surprised me, because I have not been attacked that quickly in that way, really since we've been playing the campaign so far, whether the Terran or the Zerg. I restart, get back to the exact same point where I'm building up the resources, all the drones, all of that good stuff. And in this case, on the second time I tried this map, less than 1.5 minutes real time, I'm attacked again by a Dark Templar. So even quicker. I move the 2 hydralisks from the primary base down. I know that the Overlord is not fast enough to detect these Dark Templar because they're invisible. So I move my hydralisks to intercept them. As you see, they take some damage, but I run them back towards the Overlord in order to actually take out that Dark Templar. And because that happened, I am being extremely cautious, and I am reinforcing these points immediately now. Because that happened so early, I might as well show the new unit that we also get on this mission, which is called the Zerg Ultralisk. It has been mentioned before in the videos, but they are the most powerful unit the Zerg has, at least on the ground. They have 400 hit points, 20 attack, a lot of armor. They're really powerful. Why don't we listen to some of their voice lines? And there's a great showcase after that where we're attacked and we can see the Ultralisk in some action. I am glad I moved those Ultralisks down, because the author was spot on when they said that the enemy would consistently test our beacon sites. I do get periodically attacked. It feels like every 30 seconds to 45 seconds of real time. So of course I'm not going to show every single one, just good for everyone to know that they consistently send small groups of units at every point, or they usually rotate back and forth. The next part of the battle strategy is very short and quick. I won't even show it on the screen. We just need to build 10 hydralisks, according to the author, from the upper left base in order to move to the right and expand where there's some mineral resources. There are some Protoss units there, but because it's 10 hydralisks, they're able to take it out really easily, as you see on the screen. After that, it is pretty laid back and simple, because we don't have to do very much outside of pull up the battle strategy that shows specific amounts of how many units that we should be creating. Once we get everything set up and running in our bases, we should get an air group of 8 Guardians and 4 Mutalisks, a ground group of 8 Hydralisks and 4 Ultralisks, and then 2 single unit groups with a Queen in one and a Defiler in the other. That's really interesting, because we're going to be able to showcase another new unit called the Defiler. We had access to them previously, however in this mission we will be able to use them, which is great. It also appears we should attack the right side base first, as it is not as defended as heavily as the primary Protoss base. I end up getting the army built up and all ready to go. Before I send them in though, let's showcase the Zerg Defiler, which is one of the other primary casting units that the Zerg has. They have an amazing ability called Dark Swarm that helps reduce all damage from air attacking units when they're attacking ground units. So any ground units we have are safe from air attacks as long as they are under that cloud. The last ability of the Defiler is also extremely powerful. It's called the Plague, and I used to really dislike having this happen to me. It goes and attacks an enemy unit's health, including buildings. It also goes through shields when you use it, that you see on the screen. Very powerful ability. Somewhat more niche than I would say the Dark Swarm because you have to have the right grouping of units to use it against, but still, very powerful ability in the right situation. The assault on the base begins with the air units in the front trying to draw out some of the Protoss units. I'm doing this primarily to get the Protoss Reavers to come forward because I have no shame in admitting I am terrified of Reavers. You see on the screen why that is, because one well-placed Reaver shot decimates an entire row of Hydralisks. It is extreme damage, so in that case I can tell I already need to just rush the base, take it over so I can make sure to get the resources here to build up the final assault force for the primary Protoss base. When there's only a few buildings left, Kerrigan jumps in to say that she grows tired of basically going through all of these Templar. Have they lost their courage? It's at this point we're introduced to an iconic StarCraft character that I'll let speak for themselves.
Well spoken, concubine of the Zerg. But though we strike at you from the shadows, do not think we lack the courage to stand in the light. You would do well to abandon this attack.
You seem overconfident of your abilities, Dark One. I am no helpless cerebrate to be assailed under cover of darkness. I am the Queen of Blades, and my stare alone would reduce you to ashes. You and your ilk cease to amuse me. Prepare yourself for Oblivion's embrace.
Zeratul is an awesome character. I don't know what it is exactly, but I have always loved the character of Zeratul. And the banter between Zeratul and Kerrigan, again, giving props to the writers, of course the actors as well, the voice actors, but the writers made it sound like we're listening to two characters speaking with each other, not how it can appear in a lot of other forms of either games or media, where it's almost like characters are talking at each other. To me, so far in the StarCraft story, it really feels as though the characters are talking with each other, which adds another layer to why this game is so enjoyable to go through. Once the base is completely cleared out, I establish my own there where the Protoss base used to be. The strategy guide says really easily that we only need to double our forces from the last attack. Well, that makes it nice and simple, and also means we have an enormous force of units to send at the last Protoss base. Well, there's two more bases, but to the primary base that we're going to attack first. I get all of the units ready, I start sending them over. There is just something so satisfying to me about attacking in such enormous power with the Zerg. It's almost as though, to me, it fits one of the themes of the race, which is an overwhelming number of units. There's another way to do that, which is to amass an abundance of units and send them wave after wave. But in this case, there is something I really enjoy, similar to the Terrans, I suppose, of having this enormous force of powerful units and sending them as one enormous wave, or as many as you can send, given the limitations of selecting 12 units at a time. We're not even finished through the entire base. Kerrigan jumps in with saying that the Protoss shall taste the wrath of the Queen of Blades, or some verbiage like that. And I'm pleasantly surprised in that I don't have to officially destroy every single building. This does mean the victory sign came up. That does conclude Mission 8. Why don't we watch the cinematic that plays after this mission? When the cinematic ends, we learn that Tassadar and the Dark Templar Zeratul survived the attack and are in hiding at the moment. While Kerrigan hunts them on the planet of Char, the entirety of the Zerg swarm have teleported through space-time and begun the long-awaited invasion of the Protoss homeworld of Aiur. On the first title card, where we see the background, absolutely gorgeous. I love this artwork. It is so beautiful with the contrast of the dark blues with the orange. So pretty. Called the Invasion of Aiur for this mission, the Zerg swarm is in orbit over the homeworld of Aiur. On the debriefing screen, the Overmind states that soon Aiur will fall and they will be able to incorporate the strongest known species into the Zerg's fold, probably in a similar way to how it worked with Kerrigan. Also, we need to get those Kadaran crystals for the Overmind to become manifest, which means that they must not have been created yet in the physical world. It's probably in all of the Cerebrits' minds, I imagine. That's probably why it's called the Overmind. Somehow that just came to me at this time. Our objectives on the bottom left state to bring a drone to that Kadaran crystal formation. When I first got into this mission and pulled up the map, the first thing that came to me was, whoa, that is a lot on the screen. We start in the upper left location, and the map, although it's not perfectly symmetrical, it is in a lot of ways symmetrical, because directly below us there are photon cannons, and then to the right there are also photon cannons. There are plenty of Protoss structures along the way. There are 2 Protoss bases on the left and the right. Just below the photon cannons, there's a crystal in the middle of the map, along with multiple minerals. There are also another set of Protoss bases at the far south, so quite a lot going on already on this map. When looking at the battle strategy, we need to build defenses really quickly with those sunken colonies and spore colonies. If we're not fast, then the Protoss will attack us with a large army, so we will try to avoid that. We need to build up 2 groups of Zerglings, 1 group of Hydralisks, and then 1 group of Scourge. The Scourge are an anti-air unit for the Zerg that we haven't showcased yet, but we've had access to them for a while, so it'll be great to see them. With that, why don't we try and see how this unfolds? The author mentioned in the resource management section to build a second hatchery in the main part of our base. Great advice, because the Zerg really need to ramp up their production, so I do that not only to build drones quicker, but then I can make an army even faster as well. I also build a couple of those creep colonies so I can mutate them into defense around the base. Everything is going really smoothly so far. Nothing is happening that is out of the ordinary, I would say. I build up that force that was in the battle strategy and I send them out of my base. There is immediate Protoss resistance, which is not surprising, and it goes relatively well at the beginning. I'm thinking, okay, not too bad, we're making progress. It's then that I come across Reavers that absolutely decimate my forces, and I can't really do very much against them, it would seem. I, at this point, reload and I try it again because the Protoss after that attacked my base and I had nothing left to defend. I wasn't able to create units fast enough to be able to save my base. So this is a brand new playthrough that I'm showing right now where I say, alright, let me try the attack again. I'm gonna go even faster. I send my units out. It is somehow even worse than previously, where they just get killed within, what, 10 seconds? Maybe not 10 seconds, but very fast. So I thought, oh right, I need to change the strategy of how I go about this. I really did not feel like resetting the mission a second time, so I thought, how can I salvage this? You know what's great against Reavers that attack ground only? Why not some air? So I just transition into an army of Mutalisks, I gather them and I attack out. I cannot tell you how great it felt to go after these Reavers when they are not able to attack back. The freedom of flying over and around, being able to retreat whenever I need to. So much easier in this case. Of course, the Protoss are still able to build up a huge army as I'm going through this. I even start to assault their other bases. I begin with the left side. It goes really smooth compared to if I tried to build up a larger ground force. Again, at this time, the Protoss have so much time to build up. If I were to have gone through this again and restarted, I definitely would have gone even quicker with building up a larger ground force. I would have gone with much cheaper units and just started streaming them out of my base. I would not have gone with the specific set amounts that the author mentioned. But it was a great learning experience. As you can see, I was able to at least salvage it in this mission. After I'm able to clear out the left base, I then move to the right. It's also somewhat easy. Again, Mutalisks and Guardians are so extremely powerful. With that, why don't we just see what the last part of the battle strategy states, because we need to clear the route down to that crystal in order to bring a 10-minute timer on the screen that requires the crystal to be harvested by a drone, at which point we must defend the area. When the timer starts, I already put a couple of hatcheries down there once I cleared the way because I would like to have immediate reinforcements if needed. I also wanted to build an abundance of drones so that way I could build static defenses all around this entire area, and it really works out well because it seems I am extremely safe. I'm able to also showcase very small use of the Scourge unit. It is definitely debatable how good of a showcase that is, that's for sure, but it is a showcase nonetheless. Once the timer ends, we get our drone back and it is now carrying a piece of that Kadarin crystal. All we need to do is bring it back up to our base where there is a beacon waiting for us to have the drone drop it off. That concludes the mission when the drone reaches that point. I would say this mission has been so awesome. It's been really nice. I enjoy so much going through these larger maps where you have all of these resource points to collect resources, multiple bases to go against with the enemy, in this case the Protoss, and overall it just seems as though you can build up this huge force and really go through the map. I really enjoy that. There's something about it that I've always thought was great. So, awesome mission. At this point, we're concluding mission 9, so we can then go to the next. This is it, the final mission of the Zerg campaign, mission 10. The title card reads Full Circle for the name of the mission, and we are still over the Protoss homeworld of Aiur. On the debriefing screen, the Overmind congratulates us for doing so well and that we have one last place to assault. Instead of going through the rest of the description, I would like the Overmind to describe it for us listening to them because it is, again, some powerful dialogue.
Behold, there is a temple not far from here that lies upon ground most hallowed. Though I have borne witness to the passing of countless millennia, the temple which you must assault is older by far. For it was constructed by my creators, the Xel'Naga, and it marks the site where the Xel'Naga first set foot upon Aiur. The temple must be cleared, and the Kadarin crystal set in its place. Only then shall the way be made ready. for it is upon that ground alone that I may be manifest.
We just learned some incredible lore of the StarCraft universe with a race called the Xel'Naga that created the Zerg and the Overmind, and they are the ones that first set foot on the world of Ire. That is where we are going, is to that temple. Really fascinating to get this broader range of this universe that we're going through. On the bottom left, also need to point out the only objective is to destroy that Protoss temple. When we get into the mission to pull up the map, it's a long vertical map and we start at the bottom center. There seems to be quite a bit of Protoss bases, but we need to go to that temple that's towards the top middle of the entire map. The battle strategy, I must say, is extremely short compared to some of the other missions that we've gone through. Really, it's only this one paragraph I'm showing on the screen, and granted it's large, it is still much shorter than some of the others, and it can really be summed up in the first 3 words, which is build and conquer. That is how we are going to win this mission with relative ease. I take that to heart, and I really expand on that build and conquer message. The author gives some specific unit types and amounts to build. However, because the last couple missions were really difficult given I was following the advice specifically, I would like to change that slightly and just go off of that initial build and conquer message. I really appreciate that the author said those words at the beginning, because to me, that is a quintessential way of playing the Zerg as a race. Now, the Zerg, I believe one of the primary ways of playing them, that is the most enjoyable for me at least, is to go with that overwhelming number of cheap units and continue to expand, have an incredible number of hatcheries, which is exactly what I do at the beginning of the mission, in order to gather resources and build tons of Zerglings and Hydralisks, and then as the game goes on, continue to upgrade your technology to build stronger units. But initially, go with the overwhelming wave after wave of cheap units. I do exactly that by building tons of drones in order to get resources. It's only when I'm attacked by the Protoss by a very small force of a couple of scouts and some zealots that I'm reminded I need some initial base defense outside of what I am given at the beginning of the mission with some of those Hydralisks and Zerglings and an Ultralisk. So once I clear that out, I do go with building up Zerglings and Hydralisks, and I assault the left side of the map. It's really easy to show how the Protoss have the height advantage, they even have the technological advantage, but overwhelming them with a sheer number of units that are cheap, there is something so satisfying about doing this. I'm able to go through the base, completely wipe it out. I take it over as my own, again to do that command and expansion message. I then get counterattacked slightly by a couple of zealots. However, they have nothing against this huge wave of Zerglings and Hydralisks. Even though I lost a good amount of my army by doing that initial attack, I'm able to regroup everything just based on the amount of resources coming in. I then start the assault on the right-hand side of the map, the lower right-hand side. Same thing as before, I send everything in wave after wave and just overwhelm the Protoss to the point where they are not able to mount any kind of defense. Once that base is taken out, I'm also able to start gathering resources there. And that is really the story of this mission. It made it so, I would say, much more enjoyable than the last couple missions. It's not that the last few were not enjoyable, it's just that it was becoming challenging with the limitations of not having as many units, it felt like. So in this mission, I was really enjoying being able to get that incredible large army. I don't know what it was, but perhaps after those first few attacks on the left and the right-hand bases, I think the computer may have been slightly scared or just unsure of what to do next, because they did not attack me once, not a single time. So what else would I do when I'm given all of these resources, all of these bases, and all the time to do whatever I would like? Well, I may as well build up the largest Zerg army I possibly can of 200 out of 200 supply. Look at this in all of its beautiful glory. Amazing Zerg army of exactly what I imagine from all of the cinematics that we've watched. And something else I noticed in the cinematics, there are always Zerg overlords floating around in those cinematics. So I figure I may as well include them in my final assault to be as accurate as I can to how the cinematics portray the Zerg. As everything is moved up north to that Temple of the Protoss, I would like to draw attention to the bottom left side of the screen of the mini-map. Look at the stream of units that are flowing to the north. That is exactly what I picture with the Zerg. It is a glorious sight. I love seeing that. Going to the northern part of the map where the fighting is happening, it is clear there is nothing that can be done to stop this wave of Zerg. The Protoss completely fall over. There's nothing they can do to stop this offensive. I end up destroying the temple, at which point we have a drone created for us with the crystal that only needs to be brought to that beacon. Once the drone is there, the Overmind provides some additional background and lore of the StarCraft universe that the Protoss were also created by this ancient Xel'Naga race. They were the first and gifted with purity of form, while the Zerg were second and blessed with purity of essence. The two races are only opposites of each other, and the Overmind wants to create the race as a whole. This is fascinating, and I love all the backstory to this. This is so intricate. With the mission being complete, we can see the final cinematic of the Zerg campaign. Why don't we watch it together? I really enjoy that epic last shot of the Overmind where it has now come into the physical world. We see it climbing up out of that crater. Really fascinating, and I again give the story writers so much props. I really admire the way they went about the story because it already has me feeling that I would want to see the rest of this unfold, as I'm just curious how the story continues as I'm going through this, in the same way as when you're watching some kind of episodic show. This concludes the Zerg campaign in its totality. It has been a wonderful experience to go through this again, really see how everything unfolds and the mission structure flows. With that, thank you all so much for watching. I truly appreciate it, and as I always like to say, I wish you a wonderful rest of your day, wherever you are.